Okay, welcome to this evening's reading of the Ramayana. We'll continue where we left off, the Yojakan. Praise be Bharat, and glory to our Lord Sri Rama, exclaimed the gods with great exultation. The sage Vashita and the Lord Mithila and everyone else in the assembly rejoiced to hear Bharat's words. Thrilling all over with joy, King Videha and all others present in the assembly were overwhelmed with love, even as they began to praise, each according to the best of his ability, the charming disposition both of the master and the servant, their fidelity and love, the purest of the pure. In both camps, a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow throbbed in the heart of all as they continued to hear the conversation between Sri Rama and Bharat. Realizing joy and sorrow alike, Sri Rama's mother comforted the other queen mothers, her co-wives, by recounting Sri Rama's virtues. Some would glorify the hero of Raghu's race, while others praise Bharat's goodness. Then Atri to Bharat, there is a beautiful well adjoining the hill, the water from the sacred places, which is so holy, sweet as nectar, and incomparable, may be deposited in it. On receiving Atri's command, Bharat dispatched all the vessels containing the holy water and himself repaired with his younger brother and the sage Atri and other hermits and holy men to the well, which was fathomless in its depth, and deposited the holy water in that sacred place. Transported with joy, the sage Atri lovingly spoke thus, "This place has brought success to the striver from time without beginning. Having been obscured by time, it was known to none. My servants marked this soil as rich in subterranean springs of water and dug a big well in it with a view to securing good water. By a decree of providence, the whole world has been benefited by dropping in this well the water from holy places and the idea of religious merit accruing from a bath in this well, which was most incomprehensible to the ordinary intellect, has become easily intelligible to all. People will now call it by the name of Bharat Kupa, a well sacred to the memory of Bharat. Its sanctity has been enhanced because water from all holy places has been mixed into it. People who take a plunge into it with devotion and with due ceremony will become pure in thought, word, and deed." Telling one another the glory of the well, all returned to the hermitage of Sri Rama, the Lord of Raghus, and the sage Atri pointed out to the chief of Raghus the purifying power of that holy place. The night was pleasantly spent in narrating sacred legends with love till it was dawn. Having finished their daily morning routine and receiving the permission of Sri Rama, Atri and the preceptor, the two brothers, Bharat and Satrugna, proceeded on foot to roam about in the forest associated with the name of Sri Rama, accompanied by their followers, all in simple attire, feeling inwardly uncomfortable at the thought that the two brothers walked without shoes on their tender feet. Earth smoothened her surface and hid into her body all disagreeable, hard, and unsightly things, such as the spiky blades of kusha grass, thorns, stones, and crevices. In this way, earth made the path delightful and smooth, while a refreshing breeze breathed cool, soft, and fragrant. The gods rained down flowers, the clouds afforded shade, the trees blossomed and bore fruit. The grass made the earth's surface soft, the deer cast their charming glances, while the birds whispered their sweet notes. In this way, all offered their services to the two princes, whom they knew to be Sri Rama's beloved brothers. When all supernatural powers become easily attainable to an ordinary individual who utters the name of Rama, even while yawning, this is no great honor to Bharat, who was dear to Rama as his own life. In this way, Bharat roamed in the forest. Even hermits felt abashed to see his devotion and austerity. The sacred ponds and tracts of land, the birds and beasts, the trees and grasses, the hills, woods, and orchards were charming, wonderful, and preeminently holy. Seeing them all so divine, Bharat asked questions about them. In reply to them, the great sage Atri told him with a glad heart the origin, name, attributes, and purifying virtues of each. Taking a dip at one place, they made obeisance at another. Here they beheld sights that were ravishing to the soul, While there, they sat down with the permission of the sage and thought of Sita and the two brothers, Sri Rama and Lakshman. Seeing Bharat's good disposition, affection, and loyal services, the sylvan gods gladly gave him their blessing. The third watch of the day would be half spent with the two brothers returned to their camp and gazed upon the lotus feet of their Lord. Bharat visited all the sacred spots in 5 days. The last day was spent in discussing the shining glory of Hari, Bhagavan Vishnu and Hara, Lord Shiv, till it was dusk. On the morrow, after bathing, the whole assembly met again, Bharat, the Brahmanas, and King Mithila. Though knowing at heart that the day was auspicious, the tender-hearted Sri Rama hesitated to say so. Sri Rama looked at his preceptor, King Janaka, in the assembly. But the very next moment he felt nervous and turned his eyes to the ground, praising his regard for others, feelings the whole assembly thought that nowhere could one find a master so considerate as Sri Rama. Bharat, who was clever enough to perceive Sri Rama's wish, lovingly rose and imposing great restraint upon himself fell prostrate on the ground. Then joining his palms, he lovingly said, "My Lord, you have granted me all my desires. For my sake, everybody has suffered a good deal of trouble, and you too have been put to much inconvenience. Now, my Lord, give me your permission to leave, so that I may go back to Ayodhya and remain there till your return." Admonish me, O gracious Lord of Kosala. Tell me some means by practicing which for the remaining period of your exile, your servant may be enabled to behold the feet of his merciful master again. Your citizens, your kinsmen, and your other subjects too, my Lord, are all hallowed and steeped in joy because of the love they bear for you and the relationship they have with you. It is better to be tormented by the agonies of birth and death for your sake, while without you, my Lord, it is no use obtaining the supreme state of blessedness. Knowing the hearts of all, and even so the liking and longings of your servant's heart, as well as his way of life, my all-wise Lord, who is a protector of the suppliant, will protect all and will take care of them, both in this world and in the next, till the last. I am fully confident of this in every way, and when I ponder this, I am not in the least disturbed about it. My own distress and my Lord's kindness have both combined to make me impudent. Correcting this great fault of mine, my master, instruct this servant of yours without reserve. Everyone heard Bharat's prayer, applauded it, and said, "This supplication of Bharat is like a swan that sifts milk from water." The all-wise Sri Rama, the befriender of the afflicted, when he heard the meek and guileless speech of his brother Bharat, replied in terms appropriate to the place, time, and occasion. "Brother, it is our preceptor, the sage Vashishta, and King Janaka, who take thought for you and me as well as for our people. Whether we be at home or in the forest, so long as our preceptor, the sage, and the Lord Mithila are our guardians, neither you nor I can even dream of trouble. For us two brothers, you as well as myself, the highest achievement of our human life, nay, our material gain, our glory, our virtue, and our highest spiritual gain consist in this, that both of us should obey our Father's command. It is in vindicating the king's reputation that our good lies both in the eyes of the world and in the estimation of the Vedas. Those who follow the advice of their preceptor, father, mother, and master never stumble even if they tread a wrong path. Pondering thus and putting away all anxiety, go and rule over Ayodhya till the appointed period. The responsibility for the protection of our land, treasury, kinsmen, and our own people rests on the dust of our preceptor's feet. As for yourself, you should protect the earth, your subjects, and your capital in accordance with the advice of your preceptor, mothers, and the minister. A chief should be like the mouth, which alone does all the eating and drinking, but supports and nourishes all the other limbs with discretion, says Tulsidas. The essence of a king's duty is only this much, which lies hidden in the Shastras, even as a desire is cherished in the heart before it is expressed. The Lord comforted his brother Bharat in many ways, but without some prop his mind found no consolation or rest. His regard for Bharat on the one hand and the presence of elders and ministers on the other, overwhelmed the Lord of Raghus with a mixed feeling of embarrassment and affection. The Lord at last took compassion on him and gave him his wooden sandals, which Bharat reverently placed on his head. The sandals of the all-merciful Lord were like two watchmen, entrusted with the duty of guarding the people's life, or they might be compared to a pair of caskets to enshrine the jewel of Bharat's love, or to the two syllables constituting the word Rama, intended for the practice of the human soul. Or they might be likened to a pair of doors to guard the race of Raghu, or a pair of hands to assist in the performance of good deeds, or again to a pair of eyes to show the noble path of service. Bharat was highly pleased to get this prop. He felt as happy as if Sita and Sri Rama had agreed to stay. He made obeisance and begged leave to depart, and Sri Rama clasped him to his bosom, while the malevolent Lord of Celestials, taking advantage of this adverse situation, made the people wary. That mischief, however, proved a boon to all. It helped to sustain their life, like the hope of Sri Rama's returning to Ayodhya on the expiry of his term of exile. Otherwise, people would have succumbed to the fell disease of separation from Lakshman, Sita, and Rama in great agony. By Sri Rama's grace, the imbroglio was resolved, and the gods who were hostilely disposed towards the people of Ayodhya now turned out helpful as allies. Sri Rama locked his brother Bharat in a close embrace. The ecstasy of his love cannot be described in words. His body, mind, and speech overflowed with love, and the firmness of the firm lost all firmness. His lotus eyes streamed with tears. Even the assembly of gods was grieved to see his condition. The host of sages, the preceptor, and a champion of firmness like Janaka, the gold of whose mind had been tested in the fire of wisdom, nay, who were created by Brahma as free from all attachment, and were born in this world even as a lotus springs up from water, and yet remains ever above it. Even they were overwhelmed in mind, body, and speech, and lost all reason and dispassion when they saw incomparable and boundless affection of Sri Rama, the chief of Raghus, and Bharat. The affection of Sri Rama and Bharat, which baffled the wits of King Janaka and the preceptor Vashishta, it would be a great blunder to call it mundane. People would account the poet hard-hearted if they had heard him describe the parting of Sri Rama and Bharat. The rapture of that delicacy was past all telling. Thinking of the love that manifested itself on the occasion, even eloquence shrunk into itself. Sri Rama first embraced Bharat and consoled him, and then he gladly clasped Satugna to his bosom. Reading Bharat's mind, his servants and ministers all left and set about their respective duties. The people in both the camps were sore distressed to learn this and began to prepare for the return journey. The two brothers, Bharat and Satugna, adored the lotus feet of their Lord, and bowing to the orders of Sri Rama, they set out on their journey. They supplicated the sages, ascetics, and sylvan gods and honored them again and again. Bharat then embraced Lakshman, while Satugna bowed to him, and both placed the dust of Sita's feet on their head and received her loving benediction, which was the root of all fair blessings. They departed. Sri Rama, with his younger brother Lakshman, bowed his head to King Janaka and supplicated and extolled him in many ways. Moved by compassion for us, my lord, you suffered much and came all the way to this forest with your retinue. Now kindly bestow your blessings on us and return to your capital. At this the king took courage and departed. The Lord also treated with honor the sages and other brahmanas and the holy men, and bade goodbye to them with the same respect as is due to Hari, Bhagavan Vishnu, and Hara, Lord Shiv. The two brothers, Sri Rama and Lakshman, then called on their mother-in-law, and having adored her feet and received her blessings, they came back. Sri Rama and his younger brother took leave of the sages Kaushika, Vishwamitra, Vamadeva, and Jabali. The citizens, his own kinsmen, and faithful ministers, with due courtesy and obeisance. The gracious Lord sent back men and women of all ranks, high, low, and middling, with due honor. With sincere affection, the Lord adored the feet of Bharat's mother, and embraced her, and having removed all her embarrassment and grief, saw her off in a palanquin duly equipped for the purpose. Sita, who cherished unalloyed love for her most beloved Lord, returned after meeting her kinsmen, father and mother. Making obeisance to her mothers-in-law, she embraced them all. The poet has no enthusiasm left in his heart to describe her affection. Listening to their advice and receiving benedictions of her liking, Sita was lost in the love both of her parents and mothers-in-law. The Lord of Raghu sent for the beautiful palanquins, and with words of consolation, he helped all his mothers mount them. The two brothers, Sri Rama and Lakshman, embraced them again and again with equal affection and sent them off, equipping the horses, elephants, and vehicles of every description. The hosts of Bharat and King Janaka set out on their journey with their hearts full of Rama, Sita, and Lakshman. All the people went on their journey as if in trance. Even the bullocks, horses, elephants, and other animals trudged on against their will, sad at heart and depressed in spirit. Adoring the feet of the Guru, the sage Vashishta, and the Guru's wife, the Lord as well as Sita, Lakshman, returned with a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow to their hut of leaves. The Nishada chief was courteously sent away and departed, leaving the Lord with a great wrench to him. Leaving the Lord was a great wrench to him. Pressed to return, the Kolas, Kiratas, Bilas, and other foresters returned after bowing again and again. The Lord with Sita, Lakshman, sat down in the shade of a banyan tree and grieved over their separation from their near and dear ones. He described to his beloved spouse and younger brother the affection, noble disposition, and polite speech of Bharat. Overpowered by love, Sri Rama extolled with his own blessed lips Bharat's faith and affection in thought, word, and deed. At the time the birds, beasts, and the fish in water, nay, all the animate and inanimate creatures of Chitrakuta felt disconsolate. The gods, when they saw the condition of Sri Rama, the chief of Raghus, rained down flowers and told him what had been going on in their homes. The Lord made obeisance and reassured them, and they returned, glad of heart, without the least fear in their mind. With Sita and his younger brother Lakshman, the Lord shone forth in his hut of leaves. It seemed as if Bhakti, Vairag, and Jnana had appeared in shining forms. The sages and other brahmanas, the Guru, Bharat, King Janaka, and the whole host was mentally disturbed on account of their parting with Sri Rama. Revolving in their mind the numerous virtues of the Lord, all wended their way in silence, crossing the Yamuna. Everyone reached the other bank. The day passed without any food. The next halt was made on the other bank of the Ganga. Made all arrangements for their comfort. Faring over the Sai, they bathed in the Gomati and reached Ayodhya on the fourth day. King Janaka stayed in the capital for 4 days, looked after the state administration as well as all the state property, and entrusting the reins of government to the ministers, the Guru and Bharat, he left for Tirotha, and after making all necessary preparations, following the preceptors' advice, the men and women of the city ensconced themselves in Sri Rama's capital. All the people practiced religious austerities and fasted in order to be able to see Rama again. Discarding all personal adornments and sensuous pleasures, they kept their lives in the hope of the expiry of exilement. Bharat instructed the ministers and trusted servants who set about their respective duties as directed. Then calling his younger brother, he admonished him and entrusted him with the service of all their mothers. Summoning the brahmanas, he made obeisance, and joining his palms, prayed to them with due courtesy befitting their age. Pray, charge me with any duty, high or low, good or indifferent, and hesitate not. He also sent for his kinsmen, citizens, and other people, and setting their mind at rest, established them peacefully. Accompanied by his younger brother, Satrudna, he then called on his preceptor, and prostrating himself before him, submitted with joined palms. With your permission, I will now live a life of penance. Thrilling over with love, the sage replied, whatever you think, speak, or do will be the essence of piety in this world. Hearing this advice and receiving the great blessing from his preceptor, Bharat called astrologers, and fixing an auspicious day and hour, happily installed on the throne of Ayodhya the wooden sandals of the Lord. Bowing his head at the feet of Sri Rama's mother and his preceptor, and receiving the permission of the Lord's sandals, Bharat, a staunch upholder of righteousness, erected a hut of leaves at Nandigrama and took up his abode there. Wearing a tuft of matted locks on his head and clad in hermit's robes, he dug the earth low and spread thereon a litter of kusha grass. And food, dress, utensils, sacred observances, and austerities He devoutly practiced the rigid vow of hermits and professedly discarded in thought, word, and deed all adornments of body, wearing apparel, and in many pleasures of the sense. The sovereignty of Ayodhya was the envy even of Indra, while the very report of the riches possessed by Darsharat put to shame even Kubera. Yet in that city Bharat dwelt as indifferent as a bee in a garden of champak flowers. The blessed souls who are devoted to Sri Rama's renounce like vomit the splendor of Lakshmi, the wealth and enjoyment of the world. As for Bharat, he was the beloved of Sri Rama and did not owe his greatness to this achievement. The karak bird is praised for its constancy and the swan for its power of discrimination, sifting milk from water. His body grew thinner day by day, his fat was reduced, yet his strength of body and the charm of his face remained the same. The flame of his love for Sri Rama was ever bright and strong. His partiality for virtue steadily grew and his mind was not at all sad. Even as with the advent of autumn, the water of lakes and rivers, etc., decreases, but the rattan plants thrive in the lotus blossoms. Control of the mind and senses, self-restraint, religious observances, and fasting shone like so many stars in the cloudless sky of Bharat's heart. His faith stood as the pole star. The prospect of Sri Rama's return on the expiry of his term of exile represented the full moon night, while the thought of his Lord glistened like the Milky Way, as his affection for Sri Rama was like a fixed and spotless moon that ever shone clear amidst a galaxy of stars. All great poets hesitate to portray the mode of living, the creed, the doings of devotion, the dispassion, the stainless virtues, and the splendor of Bharat. They baffle the wits of even Shesha, Ganesha, and Saraswati. He daily worshipped the Lord's sandals with a heart overflowing with affection and constantly referred to them in the disposal of the many affairs of the state. His body thrilling all over with emotion, and heart full of Sita and Sri Rama, his tongue repeated Sri Rama's name, and tears flowed from his eyes. Lakshman, Sri Rama, and Sita dwelt in the forest, while Bharat mortified his flesh through austere penance, even though living at home. After considering both sides, everyone said that Bharat was praiseworthy in every way. Holy men felt abashed to hear of his religious vows and observances, and the sight of his condition put the greatest of sages to shame. The most sanctifying story of Bharat's doing is delightful and charming and a fountain of joy and blessings. It drives away the terrible sins and afflictions of the Kali Yuga. It is a veritable sun to disperse the night of the great delusion which has thrown us into this world, and is a lion, the king of beasts, for crushing the herd of elephants in the shape of sins and allays all kinds of suffering. It delights the devotees, relieves the burden of transmigration, and is the essence of the moon of devotion to Sri Rama. If Bharat, who brimmed over with the nectar of devotion to Sita and Sri Rama, had not been born, who would have practiced the difficult vow of self-abnegation and austerity and control of the mind and senses that transcended the imagination even of sages? Who would have dispelled the woes, burning, agony, poverty, hypocrisy, and other evils of the world through his fair renown? And who in this Kali Yuga would have forcibly diverted the mind of villains like Tulsidas towards Sri Rama? Whosoever reverently hears, says Tulsidas, the story of Bharat with strict regularity shall assuredly acquire devotion to the feet of Sita and Rama, and a distaste for the pleasures of life. Thus ends the second descent into Manasa Lake of Sri Rama's exploits that eradicates all the impurities of the Kali Yuga. And that concludes our reading for the evening. And next week we'll begin with Descent 3. And thank you for joining us and for listening. Oh.